Welcome to Authentic Living with Roxanne on Global Voice Radio. Join Roxanne Derhodge and her thought-provoking conversations, the catalyst to live your life to the fullest.
Hi everyone, it's Roxanne Derhodge again. So nice that you tuned in yet again to Authentic Living with Roxanne. So today I have a very special guest and actually some exciting news. So my new brand, the Authentic Connection Movement, is about to have its first event, and we've been privileged to have some awesome lineup, of which Mr. Dave Phillipson is one of them, and he's the CEO of CEOSPACE. So today he's going to chat a little bit about what he does in his world and with CEOSPACE, specifically around networking and all the things that he does out there with entrepreneurs. So Dave, thanks so much for joining me on Authentic Living with Roxanne today.
My pleasure. And just so I'm in a good place, I want to share that September Dohrmann is actually the CEO, and Berny Dohrmann is the founder. And just a little bit of background on CEOSPACE. Bernie's father was a mentor to people like Napoleon Hill, Walt Disney, Zig Ziglar, Buckminster Fuller, you name it, just about any big name, and that's it. I'll go through another list here. Jack Kennedy, Martin Luther King, W. Edwards Deming, W. Clement Stone, Earl Nightingale, Jim Rohn, and many others. And then Bernie has been the coach of the coaches. Any big name that's out there today, he has been a mentor to. And CEOSPACE came out of it actually started in Canada. It started at the Chanticleer Hotel near Montreal.
Wow.
About 30 years ago.
About 30. Wow. So it got started in Canada. So I'm so sorry for seeing. So your role or your title with CEOSPACE then is what, Dave?
Well, I'm often referred to as the Director of Global Development, and I have a lot of fun going out and helping with our members. We have over 300,000 members in 144 countries. Focus right now is not just growing the membership in those countries, but also growing the presence and working with political delegates from the various countries, not just the entrepreneurs.
Awesome. So we feel privileged that with you coming to Toronto on June 22nd to be able to share the wisdom of CEOSPACE. So the title or the workshop event is called Authentic Leadership, Creating a Culture of Wellbeing in the Workplace. So tell us a little bit about how you got started, and obviously you've been in the field of personal development for a long time. So tell me a bit about that, and what keeps you in a field for that long. Obviously, I've chatted with you before, and you're quite passionate about it. So tell me a bit about your beginnings.
Sure, my beginnings, I would say, in personal development. I found Tony Robbins when he was struggling to get 100 people for a weekend for a fire walk, and we helped put him on the map. And then his info commercial kicked in, and that helped carry him quite a distance. And then found a little group at the time. It was called Peterlow International, which is also a Canadian group, I believe, right there in Toronto where you are. They were doing about 600 to 700 people per event. They were doing one a month, 10 months out of the year. We quickly ramped them up to where we were doing between 12 to 25,000 per event 3 times a week, and doing 11 months out of the year and just packing stadiums. I was introduced to CEOSPACE several years later, and by a gentleman by the name of Art Linkletter, who in the 60s and 70s had a show called Kids Say the Darndest Things. And I was quite skeptical of this thing called CEOSPACE because I'd never heard of it. Yet all of my friends, all these big names that I put on stages, were all members.
Okay.
And so I went with reluctance. They had a money back guarantee, still do today. But I was dead set in my own mind that I had seen everything and done everything. So I knew I was going to get my refund. And actually what happened is I'm so impressed because everything else out there is just a pitch fest. And this was refreshingly different. And it was a group of collaborative people that came together to conspire together to help each other grow their businesses. And when I say businesses, some extremely big names, just in the publishing side, you've CEOSPACE is responsible for that's The Secret, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Mark and Jack actually met there. The title came from there, as did many of their early authors. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The list goes on in that list. The producer that put Oprah Winfrey on the map. Non-publishing that people know is Ugg Boots, airborne by I almost spoke, a second grade school teacher. In fact, she couldn't afford us. We showed her how to raise the money so she could. Took her all the way, including her exit in 2010, for $500 million. So
Wow.
CEOSPACE has got a lot of good people that help each other, and it's collaborative. And it's amazing what happens with the human spirit when you create that cooperation environment within a group of people that are like-minded.
Right, because with our event, it's about talking about how leaders and entrepreneurs need to be authentic and connected, right? So if you think about it, I think of a lot of experiences when I've been an executive in a health and wellness firm, and you would have senior level VPs just being downright toxic to behind the house. And then they were frontward facing to the clients, and then they were basically on stage, or they were kind of polished. But what was happening in the reality of some of this environment, unfortunately, Dave, was that it was quite toxic. So I find it interesting that you're talking about collaboration, because unfortunately in the corporate sector, what happens is it becomes so competitive that it's almost like people are clawing their way up. And unfortunately, sometimes even more so when you're a female at an executive level. So tell me, how do you, like with collaboration and CEOSPACE, what's the difference? How do you attract the people that you attract? And how do you, if you do have someone that's a more individual and individualistic, how do you work with them?
Well, first we'll judge as to whether we let them in or not. We're private, we're by invite only. We weed out those that aren't cooperating. And cooperation is a buzzword the last few days, I would say. Not the last few days, the last few years, probably last 3, maybe 5 years. CEOSPACE has been putting it into practice for 30 years and proving it. The number one difference is cooperative capitalism. Mm-hmm. Capitalism, much like socialism, communism, etc., is another failed system. The only thing that's been proven to work is cooperative capitalism. And when people learn what cooperative capitalism is, then it makes sense to them and they get it. And there are, if somebody's on the fence, we believe that, hey, this is somebody that is a giver. They're not a taker. Mm-hmm. Then we'll give them an opportunity to prove us right that they'll catch on as well. Okay. And when it does, it's unstoppable.
So you're really kind of vetting people out once you expose them to the environment, or you're doing a bit of a meet and greet initially to get a sense of them before you expose them to the space.
Yeah, and a lot can be done just in conversation on a phone call. I've been doing this for long enough that I know what the keys are, what somebody is, et cetera, just by the words they use and some of their background, et cetera. And it's refreshing to find people that truly are collaborative, that truly are, and those people. And I'll say this, not everyone recognizes CEO Space as something that they want to do the first time they meet us. Usually it takes between 3 and 7 contacts, exploring conversations, etc. Maybe even putting them on with a strategist that can help them better understand how CEO Space can help their business grow much faster, much further. That said, about 10% of the people out there, and I was one of them, when we get the idea of cooperative capitalism and see how it works, it's like, wow, I've been looking for something like this my entire life. That was part of my skepticism as well, is I couldn't believe that there was a group of at the time, I think there was about 75,000 people around the world. I couldn't believe there was a large group that came together on a regular basis that did business the way that I was raised, with the same values as my grandparents that were passed on to my parents, etc. And, the values of the greatest generation. I couldn't believe that it existed in business and I hadn't heard about it.
Right.
So that created some skepticism as well. I'm just realizing I've got 2 pairs of glasses. I only need one. So
just one to see. That's all.
That's right.
The other one could be decoration.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting, because I can tell you, obviously having been an executive, but also as an entrepreneur, it's finding the right synergies with the people that you want to relate to, and that can be difficult, right? Based on certain environments that you go into. Let's say I'm entering an environment and I'm shifting careers. Someone like me that was a psychotherapist, and now I'm speaking and training. Those types of things. It's a shift. It's a pivot to do something new. And
it is.
Yeah. And I'm entering a field, and then I go, you go into arenas, and then oftentimes I'm interested to hear your feedback. There's a lot of, I'm going to use the word fear, because there seems to be a lot of egos sometimes when you're trying to break into certain fields. Right?
Well, yeah. You are who you are, and when you're living your authentic self, then it's easy to fit in where you belong. And we've changed cultures, whether it's 3M, IBM, we changed the cultures. They sent their leaders to CEOSPACE to change their culture within. And most of us in North America have been watching cooperation versus competition for years. Microsoft was so competitive that they wouldn't allow each the different silos to talk to one another. And what happened? They would put out crappy product after crappy product after crappy product, and finally they're just coming around to being more cooperative, and they're starting to get things right. Apple, on the other hand, was so cooperative that people were willing to sleep near their desk and work there, and they created community within their workspace, and Apple thrived. I remember, in fact, I was fortunate enough to be able to say, this isn't true, and I'm going to capitalize on it. When people were saying Apple is going out of business, Apple's going to go bankrupt, those types of things. And I remember Bill Gates bought, I think it was $150 million worth of Apple stock back in the 90s. And I thought, well, if he can, I can too. So that was a fun little ride. But Apple just proved their cooperation in their environment, and it's thrived. There's still a lot of cooperation, although Tim he doesn't quite understand it the way Steve Jobs does. And Apple, even though they're moving forward, there's some things that they could work on.
So definitely collaborative and cooperative. And I know at our events you're going to be speaking, but you're also going to be doing I'm going to call it like, it's like speed dating, but it's speed dating for entrepreneurs, where you do something called Snap, which I'd like you to talk a little bit about that and how it originated. And we would love people to obviously come out and join us on June 22nd at the Sandman in Mississauga on Dixie Road. What would they expect from obviously having the Snap or being part of that networking event?
Snap, Snap stands for Super Networking Accelerates Potential.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do, it's not speed dating. What it is, it's super networking. It's connecting at the heart level, at the authentic level. And basically, I'm bringing cooperative capitalism to your event. I'm going to set it up so everyone can experience it. And we're going to do it early in the day, so then it carries out the rest of the day on every break, on the lunch break, etc. And it's so refreshing. Even for people that hate networking, they love this because you're off guard. You're not selling yourself. It's bringing everybody together, bringing all resources together so people can share and help each other. And if there are any givers in the audience, they're going to really love this. For those that are just there to take, you'll definitely stand out if you're unable to set your agenda aside for just a short little while, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. Either you get it or you don't. But usually if you have a room of 200 or 300 people, you might have 2 or 3 people that leave the room because it's so uncomfortable. The idea of cooperation is so uncomfortable for them. But we're seeing that all around the world. Just in the political arenas, people are coming together and they're getting rid of the people that aren't cooperating. People want their countries back. Mm-hmm. And the world is coming together in cooperation, and that's the only way that we can ever continue to move on.
So can I ask, what kind of things do you do? Can you give us an example? Because I'm curious now, right? Because I know that, to get connected, it's difficult, right? Because we're gonna be in a room of 400 people, and you're gonna somehow get us to connect. Now, I mean, obviously in my space, in your space, we're accustomed to doing these kinds of things. I would assume a lot of entrepreneurs do that because they have to, network and market and get out there. Give me an example of some of the little things that you do that people may be exposed to, or is it an entire process?
Yeah, with the time that we have on a short little cast like this, there isn't the time to go in depth, but I can give you examples, and I've given you some already, but let's take something that was a hot topic just a few years ago. In the Muslim community alone, you've got 4 sects, and you've got, you take the Sunnis and Shiites, for example. They're fighting within one religion over competition. Mm-hmm. And they're magnifying their differences. And if we're able to teach them to celebrate each other's differences, it changes, it shifts, and what it leaves for the children of tomorrow is outstanding. For example, you teach them to celebrate differences rather than magnify. Magnifying a difference is, oh, well, you're this, and you do this, and you wear this, and you eat this, and you talk like this, etc. But if you celebrate a difference, become curious. Tell me about your food. Tell me about your dance. Tell me about your gowns. What does this mean in part of your celebration? Share with me your celebrations. How does that work? And I want to know how that's unique with mine. And then each side's sharing what their celebrations are like, and they're realizing, wow, that's magnificent. Because you never want to take magnificence away from another human spirit. You want to breathe magnificence into them. And if the children are raised learning to celebrate each other rather than magnify the differences, man, the future is incredible, and it's something I want to stick around for.
So you're already having people see people for who they are versus that you're different than me. You're something weird. You're something to say, curious. Now I'm from Trinidad and Tobago originally, and coming from a little island, I was quite young when I came to Canada, and it was difficult because it's not that people didn't want to know, but a lot of people, if you're different, and I'm going back, into the late 80s. There wasn't a lot of diversity like there is now, and people would kind of, they weren't sure. Do you speak English? I'm like, yeah, I speak the Queen's English. That's all I grew up. I grew up in a British system, so they didn't know where to put me. So I could see how that would really kind of curiosity. Oftentimes people get afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. They're frightened by it because we're taught to magnify, and here you are. You're speaking proper English, real English. And we're still learning your language here in the States after 200 plus years. But yeah, you talk funny. You have an accent. I remember that all the time, being raised in a small town in the Great Lakes area. Is somebody has an accent, it's really magnified back there because people don't understand. There's a smaller picture of the world. Of course, now living in a much larger city, one of the largest in the U.S., and also traveling the world, you get to pick up on different things. And I'll hear something now, I guess because I do understand cooperation and celebration, etc. I want to find out, what are they about? What do I know already about their culture? What can I learn more about their culture? And more importantly, how can we help each other on each other's dreams? Because when you bring dreams together and you magnify them, that's pretty incredible. That is the human spirit. It allows you to become more of your authentic self, and it's quite refreshing.
So we're going to experience that then on the 22nd for sure. For anybody that's going to attend, it sounds amazing. So with Bernie, what role does Bernie play now with CEOSPACE? Is he still attending events, or is it's something that he's kind of a bit removed now?
In 2013, he retired from CEOSPACE. And he handed the reins over to his wife. And his wife, to all women, actually, at the executive level. And CEOSPACE has been celebrating equal partnership for women for 30 years. We're just starting now to hear about it in the corporate realm, but CEOSPACE that's been the focus for over 30 years. And I may have shared with you, and I'll certainly, any of the guests that want to contact you, put them in touch with me. There is a video by Sharon Lecter. Now that name may not ring a bell to all of your audience, but to some they will. And the reason for it is if they have the early books by Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books, it says on the front cover, in small print on the lower right, written by Sharon Lecter. Sharon also happens to be the only female on the board of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. Sharon also chose CEOSPACE to not only announce Think and Grow Rich for Women, but also to launch Think and Grow Rich for Women as well. And it's because of CEOSPACE holding a space for equal partnership for women through cooperation and collaboration as opposed to competition. There hasn't been, you don't hear about the glass ceiling at CEOSPACE because of all these powerful women.
Well, what a refreshing space as a female entrepreneur, wanting to be able to be treated the same. And I know also some of the information that I've looked at, I see that Lisa Nichols was, her space she spent, and she, you know, I was watching something on YouTube, and she talked about the impact that CEOSPACE had on her, and when she was beginning, because she, you know, and how much more authentic can you get than Lisa Nichols?
That's
Truly.
right.
Like, I mean, she's captivating. You know, I still listen to that story about when, you know, when she, you know, the diaper story, which kind of sits with me. And anybody that's not heard her talk about that, she talks about, you know, her struggles and how real it was when she was starting off, and that she had to do something different because the legacy to her son was that he was not going to go through this like she has. But what an inspiration when I watched her story.
Yes, Lisa is, for those that aren't familiar, Lisa is the lady from The Secret with the big orange afro. That her story was, before she found CEOSPACE, she was a junior high dropout, single mom living in South Central LA, literally dodging bullets on her way to and from school from gangs. And she wanted out of that life. She didn't know how. She's another one. She couldn't figure out, you know, she couldn't afford CEOSPACE, certainly, and we helped her raise the capital to get there. And she came over 48 times to CEOSPACE. Lisa got to a point where she is now able to teach capital. Back then, she didn't understand it. She'd break down crying, etc. I can't do this. We were able to connect her with Chicken Soup for the Soul. She did Chicken Soup for the African American Soul. She later she was the first woman in the history of publishing. I'm sorry, not the first. She was the second woman to receive $1 million advance on her first solo release, which was No Matter What, which came out of CEOSPACE. She launched it at CEOSPACE. But the first woman had far more advantages than Lisa did. The first woman was Hillary Clinton as they were leaving the White House after all the blue dress scandal, or whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
So there was reason for that. Lisa it was her trials and triumph in her story, and no matter what, and being a no matter what mindset on how to get you there. And it's incredible. And we're excited that we may be seeing more of Lisa at CEOSPACE than we have in the last couple of years. And it's always good when somebody does come back home.
What an inspiration, you know, when you really listen to her path and how much she shares, and you know, the steps that she took, and that's, you know, where she's gotten out. And she talks so much about authenticity, and that's the key. The more people get an essence of who you are, that's what you relate to. And like you said earlier, Dave, not everybody is going to be into her story, right? But she found her tribe, you know, and, you know, with us at the event that's coming up on the 22nd, it's that authenticity, to have leaders recognize it, to have entrepreneurs recognize that connection is key to be able to kind of, you know, leverage and be able to move along, versus kind of, you know, being stratified and feeling like they have to be in competition. There's enough for everybody, and everybody has a message. And you know, you will find the right people based on the message that you're putting out in the world.
Absolutely. And that's another thing people will experience is that cooperation. We've proved it for over 30 years that it does work. Even I'll use real estate as an example, because almost everybody knows someone in real estate. We'll take two people from the same industry, two realtors, for example. If they work in competition, they're fighting like dogs over a bone for scraps.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it rough. But if we teach them cooperation, how to work together, they'll make far more together than they ever would alone, working against each other,
Mm-hmm.
even if they're with two totally different firms. It's amazing. And again, it comes back to the human spirit. It comes back to cooperation. It's teaching them how to do it. And we will I will say this to you, because it's easy through my experience, my observation, that we will find many miracles that will come out of this exercise in the room. There are going to be people that will pick up business right on the spot. There are going to be long lost whatevers that have been able to connect through this process. It's truly amazing. And when we try to conceptualize it in our head, if we've done a lot of personal development or business development, as I had when I came across it, it makes it very tough because we try to figure it out from everything else that we've done or learned or heard, etc. And that's what hurt me. It created the skepticism. But when I first experienced it, it was so simple and so amazing. It was daunting that no one else had ever come close to being able to create something like this as Berny Dohrmann did. And by the way, I didn't answer fully your last question. Berny is still involved with CEOSPACE. He does still come around from time to time, and he'll speak to groups. He does host CEOSPACE now that we've moved it to his near his home in Tarpon Springs, Florida. It makes it a lot easier. For 20 years, we were near LAX in Los Angeles, and 9.5 years at Lake Las Vegas. And then in 2016, moved our events nearer our corporate headquarters, which are in the Tampa Bay area. And we meet 5 times a year, every March, May, July, October, and December. And I, like most any other CEOSPACE member, about this time when it's getting this close to our May event, they're getting ready to come back to another free enterprise forum.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited. I can't wait to, because I want to get involved and experience SNAP. It sounds like, and I know I've talked to Elena. She's obviously been involved. Elena Chapman is the one of the international speakers that will be there. PJ Gaz is also a psychologist that will be involved. And everybody has been through it, and they've tried to explain it to me, but I think you've done a little bit more of it, giving me a better understanding. So, for anybody listening, please come out. You'll have the pleasure of meeting Dave. Obviously, we have our Brian Cuban, who will be speaking also at our event, and so we have a really good lineup, and I think we'll get a lot of that day in spending the time together. Now, Dave, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, please tell them where they can get a hold of you. They can obviously come and meet you in person, and I can tell that we're all going to have lots of time to be able to mingle and connect. Where can people get a hold of you if they want more information even before the event? And then hopefully they'll come out on the 22nd to meet you in Mississauga.
Yeah, because the email address, my corporate email address, is almost 35 letters long. I'm going to give the easiest. It's Dave Phillipson, all one word, @Gmail. Just use my personal account. I can do it that. They can contact me through you as well, or they can text, or they can call 714-886-9CEO or 9236, or find me on Twitter at Trust Dave.
Okay, awesome. Well, this has been amazing. I'm you're the first interview for the event, and so we're wrapping up, and I started with the marketing yesterday. Brian Cuban's he's excited, and he's can't wait to meet everyone also. And of course, I know Elena and PJ very well, and obviously myself being on stage, it will be a pleasure to be able to share the stage with all of you. Till we meet on the 22nd, thanks so much for being here. I know you've provided a lot to my listeners. And, if anything, when I listen to Dave, I recognize it's all about, like you said, the human spirit. And when I speak on authenticity with leaders, I talk about the importance of the bigger picture. If people can get a sense of who you are, they'll do things like you said. People slept at places like the headquarters of Apple, because they bought into the big picture or the why of why things were being done versus it being a transaction. As human beings, we need to feel like we're part of a bigger cause. So I look forward to the events on the June 22nd. There will be a link attached to the end of this podcast, and if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to me at roxanne@roxannederhodge.com, or you can reach me on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. Okay, again, Dave, thanks so much, and we'll look forward to connecting with you soon. Take care.
Thank you.